It was a late autumn afternoon in Portland, Oregon, the kind where the sky dimmed too early and the breeze carried just enough chill to make your hands instinctively seek warmth. I remember standing by the kitchen window, stirring the bechamel for lasagna, watching leaves spiral onto the sidewalk below. My heart was hammering. My hand kept drifting to the little curve of my stomach. Not visible yet, but unmistakably there. I was 12 weeks pregnant, and tonight I was going to tell Ethan. We had been married for 4 years, together for 7. We were never the type to map our future with Pinterest boards or countdown apps. Still, there had been lazy Sunday talks of someday we'd take that trip to Barcelona, someday we'd get a dog, someday we'd have a child. But we never circled a date on the calendar, never really planned. Life was too busy, his work was always on fire, and I was constantly juggling client deadlines at the architecture firm. We floated through time like we had all the years in the world. I didn't plan to get pregnant. It was one of those rare but all too real side effects, the antibiotics I took during that stomach bug messed with my birth control. I didn't even realize what was happening until I was 3 days late, then 5, then nauseous enough to skip my morning coffee. For tests later, there was no denying it. At first, I panicked. I wasn't ready. Ethan wasn't ready. But when I pictured a child, our child, everything softened. I started thinking about lullabies, warm socks, the way Ethan smiled when he looked at baby photos of his nephew. Maybe, just maybe, this unexpected news could be something good. I didn't want to stage a social, media-worthy moment. That wasn't us. So instead, I decided on comfort, his favorite lasagna, garlic bread, and a bottle of Blanton's bourbon he'd been saving for a good night. For myself, I had chilled sparkling cider and wore the navy dress he always said brought out my eyes. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet one. But I had hope. He came home late, almost 7:30, jacket slung over one arm, phone in his hand, Bluetooth still in his ear. He barely looked up when he walked in. "Smells good," he muttered, pouring himself a double bourbon before sitting at the table. I tried to brush off the unease creeping into my chest. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe work had been hell again. But his phone kept lighting up beside him, and he kept checking it. Dinner was awkward. I asked about his pitch meeting, about how his new intern was adjusting. He gave me nothing but one-word answers. Fine. Not bad. We'll see. He didn't ask me about my day. He didn't notice I hadn't poured wine. He didn't look me in the eye. Still, I pushed forward. After clearing the plates, I wiped my hands on a towel, took a breath so deep it hurt, and walked over to him. "I have some news," I said softly, sitting across from him. "It's going to change things." His eyes flicked up from his glass. "What kind of news?" "I'm pregnant." Silence. Then, something cracked across his face. Not joy, not surprise, not even confusion. No, what I saw was panic. Cold, raw panic. Like I'd just dropped a grenade onto his perfectly arranged life. "Is this a joke?" he asked, voice low but sharp. "I've taken 4 tests," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I saw my doctor this morning. It's real." He stared at me, then stood up, pushed the chair back with a screech that made me flinch. And then he said it. "You ruined everything." I blinked. "What?" "I didn't want this," he snapped, pacing now. "You know I didn't want this. I thought we were being careful." I tried to explain about the antibiotics, about how rare this kind of interference was, how I'd never meant to trick him or trap him. "That's not the point," he shouted. "I never wanted a kid. I just didn't say it out loud because I knew you'd leave." That hit harder than anything else. I felt something shatter inside. "So what? All those times you said someday, you were lying." He didn't answer. He just grabbed his phone, started typing furiously. I stood frozen, arms crossed over my stomach, like I could shield the baby from his words. "Is there someone else?" I whispered. His silence was louder than any confession. And then, "Lauren." "Of course." Layuran Kimu, the junior creative at his agency, the one he kept calling a fresh spark. I always thought he just admired her work. My knees buckled slightly, but I didn't sit down. I needed to stay standing, just to remind myself I was still here. Within 10 minutes, Ethan was packing. Not just a gym bag, an actual suitcase. Socks, dress shirts, his toothbrush. I followed him down the hall, numb. "You're leaving?" I asked. "Now." He zipped the case. "I'm going to Lauren's. Just for now. I need space. You're abandoning me tonight after this?" He didn't even flinch. "I'm not ready to be a father. I never will be." And then just like that, he left. The door closed. The bourbon glass still sat half full on the table. The lasagna went cold. And I stood alone in our apartment, pregnant, heart splintered, staring at the life I thought I had, collapsing in real time. I didn't cry until I heard the elevator ding and realized he was really gone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch, curled in the blanket we used to share during movie marathons, staring at the shadow of our ceiling fan spinning above me. The silence was deafening. Ethan had always left his dress shoes near the door. They were gone. His cologne still lingered faintly in the hallway, like a cruel reminder that he'd been there and chosen to leave. Around 2 a.m., I called Nina. I didn't even mean to. I must have hit her name by muscle memory. When she picked up, I couldn't speak. She just listened to me sob for almost a minute straight before saying, "I'm on my way." By 2:30, she was knocking on my door in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, clutching a bag of snacks, a hot water bottle, and a look that could have burned Ethan alive if he dared show his face. She didn't ask questions right away, just pulled me into a hug so tight it broke what little composure I had left. We sat on the couch, me wrapped in a blanket, Nina quietly slicing apples in the kitchen like it was the most normal thing in the world. When I finally told her everything, that I was pregnant, that Ethan had been cheating, that he left that same night, she didn't gasp or curse. She just stared at me and said, "Then we figure this out. You and me. You're not alone." That line, it was the first thing that made me cry for a reason other than pain. The next morning, I woke up on the couch, puffy-eyed and aching all over. Nina had taken the armchair, a half-empty cup of chamomile tea beside her. For a second, I let myself believe it had all been a bad dream. Then the wave of nausea hit, swift and cruel, anchoring me to reality. I sat in the bathroom, face pale, heart pounding. I looked down at my stomach, not yet showing but impossibly real. I whispered, "It's just us now, little one." And something about saying it out loud shifted the weight. I wasn't ready. I didn't know how. But this child was mine, and I wasn't going anywhere. I made an appointment with my OB/GYN that afternoon. When I told the receptionist I was newly pregnant and had just been left by my husband, she paused for a beat before gently saying, "We'll take good care of you, honey." The clinic smelled like lavender and sanitizer. I sat in the waiting room surrounded by glowing women, many with partners rubbing their backs or scrolling on phones beside them. I folded my hands over my stomach and tried not to feel like the odd one out. Then they called my name. The ultrasound room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. The technician, a woman named Carla with warm eyes and pink scrubs, dimmed the lights and pressed the wand to my stomach. A minute passed, then came the sound. That unmistakable, fluttery rush. "That's the heartbeat," she whispered. "Strong and steady." I cried. Not the dramatic, shaking kind, but the quiet, overwhelming kind that comes from your chest splitting open and your soul realizing something new has begun. That sound wasn't just proof of life. It was the beginning of mine, too. They printed the image, just a little speck shaped like a comma, but to me it looked like everything. I slipped it into my bag like a secret and walked out into the cold afternoon wind with my coat zipped high and my future still spinning in pieces, but not completely shattered. Back at home, I texted Ethan. "Me. I had my first appointment today. The baby's healthy." The message showed delivered. No reply. I sent another. Me. I don't expect you to know what to say right now, but please don't shut me out. I didn't choose this alone. Still nothing. 3 hours later, he finally responded. Ethan, I need time. I'll send money for the bills. Not a question about the appointment, not a mention of the baby. Just logistics, like this was a transaction he couldn't wait to end. I didn't reply. What was there to say? That night, Meredith, his mother, called me. I almost didn't pick up. I wish I hadn't. Grace, she started, her voice clipped but polite. Ethan told us what happened. He's overwhelmed. This wasn't the right time. I stayed silent. He's got a big promotion coming up. A lot's on his plate. You know how driven he is. Yes, I said flatly. I also know how easily he left. She paused. Then, too carefully, you should consider other options. For yourself. For your future. It took me a second to realize what she meant. She didn't say the word, but it hung there. Termination. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm keeping this baby, Meredith. Your grandchild. The line went quiet. Then she murmured something like, well, that's your decision, and hung up. I stood there shaking, not just from anger, but from the sudden clarity. They were never going to support me. Not truly. Not unless it fit into their perfect narrative of Ethan's life. Over the next few days, I moved on autopilot. I went to work, smiled through meetings, answered emails like I wasn't barely holding it together. At night, I researched single motherhood, childcare costs, legal rights. I created a spreadsheet of everything from diapers to prenatal vitamins. I filed paperwork for temporary spousal support and looked into therapy. I also deleted every trace of Lauren from Ethan's tagged photos, then blocked them both. 3 days later, Ethan texted again, not to ask how I was, but to say he'd paid rent through the next month and would be contacting a lawyer. I stared at the screen. Divorce. It wasn't even spelled out. Just slipped in casually like ordering takeout. Like walking away from your pregnant wife was nothing but a mild inconvenience. That night, I taped the ultrasound photo to my refrigerator, a reminder of what mattered. Not Ethan, not Meredith, not any of them, just me and the little heartbeat that changed everything. Liam was born on a rainy Tuesday night after 19 hours of labor and 3 full breakdowns where I swore I couldn't do it. But I did. I screamed into Nina's shoulder, cried into the hospital sheets, and finally, at 3:12 a.m., heard the tiniest cry I'd ever heard in my life, followed by a silence that shattered every part of me and rebuilt it all at once. He was 6 pounds, 10 ounces, with wisps of dark hair and a pair of lungs that made every nurse in the delivery room smile. The moment they placed him on my chest, the world narrowed to a single point. His warmth, his breath, his heartbeat against mine. I whispered, "We made it," over and over, not even sure who I was saying it to, him, me, or the ghost of the man who should have been there. Ethan didn't come. He knew my due date. I'd sent him the sonogram, even told him the hospital. I kept my phone nearby for days. It stayed silent. The birth certificate had only one parent listed. I didn't even hesitate. When I got home, I moved into a new apartment, just a little 2-bedroom in Beaverton, closer to Nina. The rent was too high, the walls too thin, and the heating unpredictable, but it was ours. Mine and Liam's. The dining room doubled as a nursery, half covered in diapers and pastel blankets. My living room became a sea of burp cloths and pacifiers. It was chaos and it was home. The first few weeks were brutal. I'd expected the sleepless nights, but not the relentless doubt. I questioned every bottle temperature, every rash, every sound Liam made in the dark. I cried in the shower where he couldn't hear me, wondered if I was enough. But somehow we found a rhythm. He taught me how to love without fear, how to exist without Ethan. I sent Ethan a photo of Liam the night we came home from the hospital. A simple message, he's here. He's healthy. No response. A week later, I uploaded pictures to a shared album I'd created months ago labeled for Dad. I don't know if he ever opened it. I doubt it. 3 weeks after Liam was born, Meredith texted me. Would love to see our grandson. No he parlé. No acknowledgement of what they'd said to me before. The suggestion, the dismissal, the erasure. Just flowers, expensive ones, with a card sign from Grandma and Grandpa. I placed them in the trash without opening the envelope. Still, I agreed to a visit. They arrived stiff and smiling, dressed like they were attending a corporate event. Meredith immediately pointed out how Liam had Ethan's ears. Paul took photos like he was documenting a product launch. They brought designer baby clothes and mentioned a potential college fund. They never asked how I was doing. They never mentioned Ethan. When Meredith brought up taking him for the weekend soon, I didn't even let her finish the sentence. No, I said, gently but firmly. He stays with me. She narrowed her eyes. You're punishing us for Ethan's choices. No, I replied, picking Liam up. I'm protecting my son from people who didn't want him to exist. The conversation ended there. Over the next few months, I stopped hoping Ethan would show up. Hope was too heavy to carry. The divorce papers arrived when Liam was 3 months old. Ethan didn't contest anything, didn't even ask for shared custody. His lawyer emailed mine a one-line summary. Mr. Holloway waives custodial rights at this time. It was so sterile, so detached, it almost felt like a business transaction, as if I were returning a rental. The judge ordered child support based on his income at the time. That was the only thing he showed up for. His accountant handled the rest. I started working part-time when Liam was 10 weeks old. Nina watched him twice a week. Daycare was out of reach, more than my rent. I juggled spreadsheets with one hand while bouncing Liam with the other. My boss, thankfully, was human. Anastasia let me work remote when I needed to, and even dropped off soup during a week when both Liam and I had the flu. Ethan's payments started coming in late, then skipped entirely. 1 month. I texted him 3 times to remind him. No reply, but I saw a photo of him and Lauren on a rooftop bar in San Francisco that same weekend. Tanned, smiling, carefree. That's when I blocked them both. Julie threw me a belated baby shower at her place when Liam was 4 months old. It wasn't fancy, just some friends, a homemade cake, and a banner that said, "You're already doing great." I didn't cry until they lit a single candle and sang for Liam like he'd already conquered the world just by being here. That night, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for Ethan anymore. Not for an apology. Not for closure. Not even for money. I had what I needed. Liam. A roof over our heads. And people who showed up, even when they didn't have to. I wasn't thriving yet, but I was surviving. And that was more than enough for now. Liam turned 5 last month. 5. It still catches me off guard sometimes, how fast time moved after Ethan left, how slow it felt in the beginning, and how somehow here we were. He's bright and kind and endlessly curious. He knows all the planets in order and has strong opinions about which dinosaurs were cooler than others. Every night before bed, he insists on one space fact and one hug extra tight. His laugh is my favorite sound in the world. And still, he has no idea who Ethan is. Not really. Last week, I took the morning off to walk Liam into his first day of kindergarten. He held my hand with such confidence, his Spider-Man backpack bouncing with each step, already scanning the schoolyard for friends. We said our goodbyes with only minor tears from me, not him. As I walked back toward the parking lot, I saw a familiar figure standing beside a black sedan, arms crossed. It was Leroy, Ethan's college roommate, one of the last people I expected to see at a school drop-off. He recognized me instantly. "Grace," he said, surprised. "Hey." I froze, then forced a polite smile. "Leroy. Wow, it's been years." We chatted awkwardly and he asked about Liam, how old he was now. Then he dropped the bomb like it was nothing. "By the way, I don't know if you heard. Ethan and Lauren broke up." I blinked. "No, I didn't." "Yeah, happened a few months ago. She wanted kids. He didn't." He gave me a pointed look. Of course. Of course she did. He went on. Told me Ethan had been laid off after his company downsized. That he was bouncing between freelance gigs and crashing on couches. Lauren kept the apartment. Ethan moved back in with his parents. I stared at my coffee as Leroy talked, feeling nothing. Not joy, not rage, just a strange sort of emptiness. Like hearing news about a character from a show I stopped watching seasons ago. That night, I looked around our home. The townhouse I'd bought the year before, with Liam's handprints painted in the hallway and a tomato garden that stubbornly refused to grow. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Our mornings were chaotic, but full of routine. 5:30 a.m. wake-ups, daycare drop-offs, school lunches, bedtime stories. My job at the architecture firm had stabilized. Anastasia promoted me to senior project manager. The raise helped me cover a better school district for Liam. I was tired, always tired, but never empty. That same month, something else had begun to change. There was a man. His name was Caleb Brennan. He had a daughter, Emma, in Liam's class. We met at the school's fall carnival, both laughing as we chased our kids through the inflatable obstacle course. He wore a terrible dad joke t-shirt that said, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right." He made Liam laugh. He made me feel seen. Not for what I'd survived, but for who I was now. It started with playdates, then texts about forgotten school forms, then dinners, casual at first, after soccer practice, until one night, after Liam and Emma had fallen asleep on the couch, we stayed up talking until nearly 2 a.m. About grief, about raising kids alone, about showing up when it's hard. Caleb's wife died of cancer when Emma was a baby. He kept photos of her in the house, told Emma stories. He didn't try to erase the past. He carried it gently. That was what drew me in. The quiet strength, the tenderness. When he fixed Liam's wobbly bike seat without being asked, I almost cried. 6 months in, we had the talk. Not dramatic, just two adults sitting on a porch after bedtime, admitting we wanted to see where this could go. He didn't try to replace anyone. He simply loved us as we were, and that was everything. Then, Ethan came back. It happened on a Saturday morning. Pancake day. Liam had syrup on his cheeks, and we were all headed to his soccer game, Caleb helping tie his cleats. We took our usual spot on the sideline. Nina was late, as always, and just as the game started, Caleb nudged me. "Do you know that guy?" I looked up. It took a second to recognize him. Ethan, standing across the field, alone, arms crossed, watching. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. At halftime, Liam came running over for water, laughing about a near goal. That's when Ethan started walking toward us. Liam looked up, confused. "Who's that?" Before I could answer, Ethan was there. He looked thinner, older, less sure of himself. His voice cracked as he said, "He's gotten big." I sent Liam back to the team, then turned to Ethan. "You got the schedule from Meredith, didn't you?" He nodded. Caleb stood beside me, calm, quietly protective. When Ethan asked if we could talk, I agreed, briefly after the game. Caleb took the kids for victory ice cream. I met Ethan at the cafe across the street. He ordered me a cappuccino. I drink lattes now. He talked about therapy, sobriety, regret. He said he'd been clean for 8 months, that he wanted to be part of Liam's life. "I know I can't walk back and like nothing happened," he said, "but I want to try." I stared at him. "You don't know him," I said. "You missed everything, his first steps, first words, first day of school. You can't just show up now and pretend." He looked away, then asked about Caleb. "He's been more of a father to Liam than you've ever been," I said softly. "And I won't let you hurt him." Ethan nodded. "Would you consider letting me see him? Supervised, just to start." I didn't answer right away. I thought about Liam, about boundaries, about not letting my anger become his inheritance. "Maybe," I said, "with conditions. You earn your place. You don't just claim it. That night, I watched Liam asleep in his bed, his hands curled into fists. I whispered, I'll protect you, no matter what. Because love isn't what you say, it's what you show up for. 3 days after that awkward coffee shop meeting, Ethan called me again. His voice was softer this time, measured, careful. He said he'd thought a lot about what I'd said and that he still wanted to try. Not just to see Liam, but to somehow fix what he'd broken. I told him we could begin with short, supervised meetings. 30 minutes. Public place. I would be present for every second. And if he disappeared again, just once, there would be no more chances. He agreed. I spoke to Liam first. It was harder than I expected. His little brow furrowed, like he was working through math in his head. When I told him someone wanted to meet him, someone who had helped bring him into the world, he asked the question I'd been dreading since the day Ethan walked out. Does he want to be my dad now? I swallowed hard. He says he wants to know you, but he has to earn your trust, the way people do when they haven't been there. Liam thought about that, then nodded. Okay, can Caleb come too? That one cracked my heart open in a different way. I hugged him tight. The first meeting took place at the park near our house. Ethan showed up early, holding a boxed Lego soccer set under one arm. He looked nervous, out of place. Liam clutched my hand the whole walk from the car to the bench where Ethan waited. Hi, Ethan said. Hi, Liam replied, barely louder than a whisper. They sat on the grass and opened the box. I watched from a nearby bench as they built goals and tiny plastic players together. Ethan asked questions, listened when Liam talked about his favorite team. There was a moment, just one, where Liam laughed at something Ethan said. It was small, brief, but I saw it. We did 3 more meetings like that over the next 2 weeks. Then Ethan pushed, asked if he could take Liam to a movie alone. No, I said instantly. 3 weeks versus 5 years? Not happening. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly and said, Okay, maybe we could all go together. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. And then he showed up at our house, unannounced, with Meredith and Paul in tow. They stood on my porch like a scene from a bad family drama, Meredith launching into some scripted monologue about moving forward as a family, while Paul handed Liam a wrapped gift and Ethan hovered behind them, eyes full of guilt. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not like this, I said. You don't just show up and act like you didn't vanish. Ethan pulled me aside while his parents waited in uncomfortable silence. And then, like a plot twist from a story I didn't ask to live, he said it. I still love you, Grace. I never stopped. I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. You walked out on me while I was pregnant. You ghosted your son for 5 years. You love a memory, Ethan, not the woman standing here. But we could try, he said, for Liam's sake, to be a real family. No, irreplía, because a real family doesn't abandon each other. Caleb has been more of a father than you ever tried to be. And I don't need a man who only comes back when everything else falls apart. He left that day with his shoulders hunched and eyes full of things I no longer recognized. Meredith texted twice that week. I didn't answer. The following day, I met Caleb on our back porch. I told him everything. I knew this might happen, he said, voice steady. But I need to ask, are you still his? I shook my head before he even finished the sentence. You're the one who stayed. You're the one who built something with us. He pulled me close. Then that's all I need to know. Weeks passed. Ethan hasn't called again. I set clear boundaries through my lawyer. Supervised visits only, my approval required for any changes. Meredith sent another birthday card. It stayed sealed. Liam, meanwhile, is thriving. He started reading chapter books and decided he wants to be an astronaut. He asked Caleb to help build a cardboard rocket in the garage, and Caleb said yes without hesitation. The other day, I caught them both sitting on the floor, deep in a space book, Caleb pointing to constellations while Liam rested his head on his shoulder. Later that night, as I tucked Liam into bed, he whispered, "I like my family just how it is." I kissed his forehead. Me too. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Ethan will drift back into silence. Maybe he won't. Maybe one day Liam will ask questions I can't answer, and I'll have to walk that bridge with him, step by difficult step. But I do know this. I am not the woman Ethan left. I am not the mother who begged for breadcrumbs of attention. I am not holding on to a life that never deserved me. I am standing in the home I built with my own hands, beside a man who chose us, raising a boy who is the very best part of me. Sometimes the family you build from ashes ends up stronger than the one that burned you down. And sometimes letting go is the most radical act of love you can offer yourself. So no, I don't want him back. Not even close.